Okay, people. So, yeah, it's really exciting because today I'm speaking with the writers of Curse of Aurora. Is it Curse of Aurora?
Just Aurore.
Aurora. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's
Okay.
a French name for sure.
But yeah, no, I really enjoyed I really enjoyed this film. It
Thank you.
was just super interesting, and I think especially the way in which you I think approach this kind of found footage concept.
Mm.
It felt a little kind of fresh. You know, I enjoyed the introduction. Although I was thinking with Casey when he's talking, he's like, "Oh yeah, like with some of this stuff, I think I should probably hand this over to the police." And it was like, "Yeah, of course you should. This is clearly gonna get your ass in trouble, especially because you're putting the footage out there."
Right. Absolutely.
I thought it's like, how did this story kind of come about? Because there were certain things that I thought, oh, this is just a story, but then when you look a little deeper, oh no, some of this stuff actually, like, there was a case of a girl getting killed, right? So
it's all very meta. It goes back and forth. I mean, Llana can speak to specifically why we attached to the story of Aurore, but the meta aspect was something that we worked on. The fact that we sort of wrote our own personalities into the film, we wrote this real life YouTube star into the film, and the situations are mined from our real lives. But so in terms of the connection to the real story, Llana, you can talk about that.
Yeah. So very much like my character, the house that we stay at in the film does belong to relatives of mine, and I've been going there. So my mom's side of the family is French Canadian. She grew up there, and then she moved to the States in her late teens. But I've been going up there for years. It's a place we do family reunions, and it is about 100 years old, and it is a cottage just like that with the crazy closets and all of that. It's a very real place. Mm-hmm. And Mehran and we've been doing films together for quite some time, and I've been saying for years we need to shoot something at that house in that town. It's a very special place, and horror is that's my jam, and so I wanted to write something that could take place there and could kind of encapsulate sort of the isolation of the big flat farms everywhere, and then obviously like the cold and iciness of winter. And so it happened to be that on one of the trips that I was visiting, I learned about the story of Aurore Gagnon, who was a little girl who lived in the town next to where my family's cottage is. And she was horribly abused by her mother and father, Marianne Hood and Telesphore Gagnon. And she eventually died, succumbing to multiple wounds that they had inflicted, and sort of left her in a room to starve, and she, just infections and everything else, and she died. And it was just very sad. And it was like a neighbor who came over and like hadn't seen the girl in a while and was like, "Let me go upstairs and see how she's doing." And they were like, "No, don't go up there." And then she went up there and saw the dead child. And so it ended up becoming, at the time, it was, I think, 1920 when she died. It was kind of the first sort of public awareness story about violence and abuse and what that can do. Sort of like the people, they were like a lot of really big Catholic farm families, and they would have just tons of kids. And the reason they had kids was to have them work on the farm. I think in a lot of cases, these very poor families out in the country were not necessarily raising kids to keep them warm and happy. It was more about what they could provide to the family. And so this story kind of started spreading that awareness that, like, oh yeah, if you beat the shit out of your kids and don't take care of them, they might die and you're a terrible person, so it was written into plays and books, and then later in the 90s, I think, or early 2000s, it was made as a beautiful film that was shot in Montreal, all about the story of Aurore as a child. It's very sad to watch. You can find it in multiple parts on YouTube. But anyway, when I found out that this had happened next to where my family's house was, I went to the church where Aurore went. I went to that grave and I saw all the toys and the offerings, which is it's like John Lennon's grave. Like people are still bringing things to her because she is considered a martyr by the locals. And so she's just a very important part of the local history and what she sort of represents. And so, yeah, I told Mehran we should probably do something that incorporates this terrible tragedy, maybe some kind of a haunting that has to do with this. Mehran wasn't super interested in covering a story about Aurore. He didn't just want to tell that story again. And he was the one that we were looking for a story. We were struggling to find it. And he had the great idea of why don't we write a script about us trying to write a script about Aurore and make it found footage and sort of, shoot a lot of what we've experienced. I brought in a lot of my personal experience from going up there over the years, like the laying in the street in the middle of the night is something I've done with my friends.
Not in the winter time, though.
What? Not in the winter. No, we had done it in the summer. It's a lot less cold, and
it's still kind of crazy. Still
crazy, but there's just it's so rare that a car will pass at that late hour, and the thing is, it's so flat and so vast that you could see or hear the lights, of a car. You could hear the car coming from so far away that you have plenty of time to get. Not that I recommend people do that, but anyway. So that's a very long way of telling you how we got to that.
So the thing about that was that to me that's all really interesting, but I kind of feel like I'd be worried that now every time I go back, I'm just thinking this. You know what I mean? Did you think that it might just taint your your space? So every time you're there, you're now thinking about oh, have I called on this ghost? Is this really gonna be you know what I mean? Just inhabiting this now.
I mean, I don't think so. Mehran and I and our real life Kevin, whose name is Kevin, is a producer that we've been working with for a long time. It was about a year ago that 2 years ago exactly, that we were up there on our location scouting trip before we shot. And we went to Aurore's grave. And of course we got permission from there's her church there, and these lovely women who sort of run the church activities. And we worked with them pretty extensively, got their permission, and they gave us their essentially blessing to shoot there. And so we were trying to be very respectful because this is real. They said that's a real grave, and she was a real child. And we didn't want to just come in there hey, Hollywood, we don't care. We're going to exploit this. That was never our intention. And so when we went and visited Aurore's grave, we actually spoke with her. I knelt down and I told her what we were doing, and I said, thank you for letting us share your story.
Is more accurate than spoke with her.
Well, okay.
She didn't answer. I think
depends on how spiritual you are, I suppose.
Right.
But I don't feel I don't feel personally haunted by Aurore, and I think that part of what we wanted to do in the film is it's not really Aurore, right? She's not really the bad ghost, right? That there's something else, there's other bad spirits at play, and that she may or may not even be warning us throughout the film. That's something to kind of look for.
The curse of Aurore is it's almost like the curse that Aurore had to bear, as opposed to Aurore.
As opposed to the curse that she brings, right? She doesn't bring a curse. She bore a curse from a terrible, abusive family. Like, I think more than anything, though, I'm a little bit nervous about staying back in that house because I think we may have pissed off my family's ghosts more than once being in that house. I don't think. I mean, there's a scene where I am holding my great grandmother's hair, and that is her real hair that my family has had. Those are the real candles they burned at her wake, and so the house is filled with very real items that may or may not be haunted, and I don't know how much that house wants me back now, but we'll see.
We'll see.
Oh man, it's one of those things that I don't know. Like I think about, and I think maybe, right, because this world is so big that you kind of think there's probably other things inhabiting other planes and all of this, but you haven't seen it, and that's kind of cool with me, because I'm just a bit like, I don't need that extra stress. But you wonder,
like, maybe I don't think so, but maybe, and I'm not gonna dig too deep. Yeah,
because I don't want to I don't need the confirmation of a yes.
Yeah,
how do you shut that door?
Very much like my character, I do want to confirm, you know, like I want evidence. I want them to talk to me and prove to me that they're there. But I don't want to disrespect either. I don't think that, you know, the character, certainly there are elements of ourselves written into the characters for sure, but they're extreme versions of our characters. And, you know, as someone who was born and raised in the US, and my mom tried to teach us French growing up, but I didn't really focus, and I lost a lot of what I had. And so every time I've gone back in my life, I've always felt like I am sort of like maybe not considered one of them, like, because I'm like an Americanized generation. And so I have felt at times like going to the local stores and like people looking at me funny, like, who is this tall blonde who speaks English only? Like there are like little people out there. They're all kind of small and with dark hair. And so I definitely stand out. But I've always tried like to not stand out. Like, I don't want to be disrespectful. I don't just want to be an idiot American coming in and being disrespectful, but the characters we definitely made them.
Yeah. Oh gosh, probably.
Gesundheit.
Thank you. But I think that all comes across really well. There's certain things that when watching it, I mean, like, oh, you really captured that, right? And that kind of, you know, obviously it's not all Americans, but there is that stereotype of brash Americans just, you know, stamping into something and being like, hey, we're doing it our way because we're the best. And you know, the reactions of the people in the shops and everyone else, and you really kind of, I feel you nailed that. But you did it, but it felt natural, it felt real, rather than this over the top situation. And I thought there was a very subtle hand at play throughout the film with a lot of these instances.
That was very
how did you kind of ensure you had that? Was it a conscious thing that you're creating this, you know, this kind of, as you said, this meta kind of reality, but you want it to ring true? So were you like real critical about the situations that you're creating?
For me, it was a combination of you know, what Llana had told me about her experiences up in that area, as well as after we had written the whole script, we did the scouting trip, like she said, and we actually wrote in some extra circumstances that we experienced. But I also wrote in you know, from the things that Llana and I wrote this very much together. But I was a foreign exchange student in Italy years ago. And there is a certain perspective of being someone living somewhere else, experiencing somewhere else, where you go through this period where you are, I mean, especially being the brash American, you're told about it, but there's just little things that you notice. So there are certain points in the film that I think add a lot of truth to that experience, which is just looking at the strange candy bars, looking at the treats that are there that are kind of like something you're familiar with, but are distinctly different from what you've grown up with. So going through the store, seeing those items, having, bumping into somebody, having them yell at you in a store, and then seeing the reactions of our three heroes walking through these things and how they're experiencing something that is just adjacent to their real world. And I do think that comes across well, and it was intentional, definitely from my side, to show things that are just completely random, that don't necessarily have to do with the story, but they build the world.
Yeah, I mean, even the stirring the eggs, like something as just mundane as that, simple as that, it really works and helps create this kind of this feeling amongst these group of friends.
That's really great. That's actually totally based on reality. That's something like, I make a quiche, and it's very specific. It's got to be a certain way, and it drives.
He's very obnoxious about it in real life.
Even in your film, you have to tell everyone this is the right way to make a quiche.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that Mehran did so brilliantly was he really made it, this sort of like voyeuristic, almost like vacation video, right? It's like you're on the journey with these characters, and those little moments that you're talking about, we wanted a lot of that. And then we wanted this, like, that's all happening. This is just their life. Like, they're waking up and they're making eggs and they're filming it because they're having fun and they're filmmakers. And, and then they're joking about Lena being hungover, but then like there's this other stuff that's kind of going on around them. And that's the stuff that if you pay attention and you see these things, a lot of our biggest fans have watched it many times in a row. They like to go back and see all the things they missed the first time. But the first time around, you're just hanging out with us.
Right.
And we've had people that are like, dude, I wish I could just like smoke a joint with you. Like that we'd have so much fun, like it just, and I think Mehran executed that extremely well. It really does feel like someone's just got the camera on and gets this minute and they turned it off to go do whatever. And now they've turned it back on again and they're capturing the next minute and we're taking you on that journey with us. And so.
I definitely
I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. What?
Oh, no. You go.
I was going to say there's a thing that Hitchcock says, which is about something to the effect of to create suspense in a scene, put a bomb under the table, have two characters talking about something at the restaurant and the bomb's on the table, but let the audience know the bomb's under the table. And so the tension builds because the audience is in on something that your characters are not. And then you just let that simmer.
Yeah. No, definitely. And I just thought that we have these things in the film, right, that really I thought sell it and help add to the consequence of everything. And like I watched so many films where you look at these relationships and you don't buy it, right? You don't buy these people are friends. You don't buy these people are in love. And I think that can really bring you out of a film. That can really take away something and take it from being something really great to being okay. But with this, I really felt that these people were friends, right? The smoking weed moment, I was like, how are they gonna do? And it actually, you were like, yeah, no, I believe that, right? It wasn't that stupid, take one to, hey guys, I'm really hungry now. Let's go.
Right.
And it's just like, ugh.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And obviously, it's gonna be different for everyone, but it's not just that, one toke and now we want the munchies.
Right.
And it was a believable moment. And that was the big thing about this. Like everything that happened, they were believable moments, which then made the creepiness even worse because you're just like, oh, fuck, that could happen. And then I'm just looking out the corner of my eye. It's like, yo, did someone just move? Like, what's happening? And I'm just like, God damn you people, what have you done to me?
Bravo. I'm glad to hear
That's great. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting you mentioned that, the fact that these feel like real friends. And very much when I watch it, and now Lex Wilson and Jordan Kaplan are friends of ours, like they really are. But we had only spoken to them virtually. And then what, Lana, we met them maybe 2 days before we started shooting?
Yeah, they arrived like 2 nights before we started shooting. We had 1 day of rehearsals, and then we just went. And by the end of it, I fully believed that was my Kevin and my Mehran.
Totally.
I mean, we just they also, I think the casting, we just got really lucky. We did online submissions, tape submissions. We got auditions from all over the country and some outside of the country as well. And we ended up, you know, with Jordan and Alex or Lex. And I don't know, like we hit it off. Like we did have fun together, and it was really great, like right from the get-go. And so, but it just helps that they were like totally motivated to do this crazy thing. I mean, we were asking for people to fly to, you know, another country to shoot in a, you know, or very remote farm area where no one would speak English, and, you know, be out there for a couple weeks, and, you know, there's going to be work outside and running through snow, and it wasn't always going to be fun. And we got really lucky that these 2 guys were down for the whole thing. And it was so fun. It was really great.
It's like I lived another life during those 4 weeks or something.
Yeah, we called it like the horror camp commune, because, like, you know, we're making horror, and we were like living together. We had 2 different houses that we were living in, and it was like a commune, you know? So it's really fun.
Yeah, that sounds really inviting. The horror camp commune. Come on down.
Come on down and get some ghosts.
Hey, so how was the casting process, right? Like, how much time do you give to talking with these people to try and see if there is a chemistry, if there is that possibility of being able to, you know, create this seamless moments?
Well, like Lana said, we used a digital casting where people were submitting audition tapes, and we gave them what are called script sides, which was basically a scene, and Lana and I chose scenes that would really show the relationship between these people as much as possible, even though it would be just them in the audition tapes. And I don't remember exactly how many we watched, but I know that we had somebody else in mind for Kevin, like pretty close to the end, and then Jordan Kaplan's, you know, headshot audition popped up like 11th hour, and we're like, wow, this guy's literally perfect. Like, I'm sorry to the other people, but we can't cast anybody else.
But we didn't do any like screen tests where we put us together, because we all lived in different places. I was in Raleigh. Well, actually, Lex, we could have, because he's also in the Raleigh-Durham area. And then Jordan's out in California. Mehran's in California. So it wasn't until we were on set that we started actually acting together. So I think we just the auditions had to be really good for us to know, okay, like this guy is right. Like he did the audition so perfectly that he doesn't need direction. You know, of course, everybody needs direction, but if the audition is so good that Mehran's like, I wouldn't have notes for him on that performance. Then
that was how it was. I mean, definitely with Jordan, and even with Lex, like, and those were the 2 most important people to cast, aside from the fact that we already had our Lena, right? Who was obviously the most important person, you know, to cast in the film.
You know.
The person that bullies them into doing this craziness.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that's really interesting, because you wonder about that when you watch certain things. Like, how do you form that chemistry? You know what I mean? Like, how long does it take to create those connections? So when you hear that, boy, you had no time to really do it, it really then just really ups the fact that you were able to do it. You know?
Yeah, I mean, when I think every project that I do, I've done things much larger than this. I've done things much smaller than this. And every time I finish one of them, when I look back a few months later, I'm like, yeah, I don't know how I could do that if I had to do that again today. So many things fall into place. So many things happen. Again, like Lana said, we really did get lucky with casting. I mean, those 2 guys were so important to make sure this thing felt right, and they threw themselves into it. But we also got lucky with finding locations. The house, Monsieur Gagnon's house, I think we had a completely different location picked out for that. And then we ended up getting, and that one fell through like 2 days before we had to shoot that scene. It's a very, very limited time frame. Like I think it was 12 or 14 total shoot days, and we had to slot things into certain days. So we end up getting an even better house that we shot Monsieur Gagnon's place. And it ended up being like, I want to say it's like the mayor's brother's house or something. Who was nice enough to let us use that place. But it just fell into place when it had to. Now there's a lot of things we do that we compromise. I mean, that expression that when you make decisions up until you start making the movie. Once you make the movie, all you do is make compromises. That's what it is. Yeah. And that's totally true. But we got so lucky in that I shot so much stuff as I envisioned it. And I'm sure Llana would agree. Like so much of it really fell into place.
Yeah, a lot of people ask us how much of the film was ad-libbed because they, the conversation between the three of us is, feels pretty genuine, I think, for the most part. And I think most people are surprised to learn that it's like 98% scripted. I mean, we stayed on script. There's a little bit of like riffing that we do, between lines, or like I think Kevin walking into the room and loving the lamp and being like groovy boo, and like there are like little cute fun things, playful things, those got thrown in, but everything else is pretty much exactly the way the script was. And so I'm very happy that we stuck to it for the most part, and that most people feel like it's ad-libbed. I think that's really fun.
Well, we definitely let them put a lot of things into their own words. I let the actors have the freedom. They're like, well, this is how I would say that thing. And so like, go ahead, feel it, live in it. That was basically my mantra, is live in this scene, because we shot each scene like a play. Like they are continuous takes, like from camera cut to camera cut. You're watching a real moment. And so we had to rehearse where the camera's going to go, where are we going to point it, where are we going to leave the camera, how are we going to leave the camera so that it creates an off angle, so that it feels like it was casually left there. And it was very much a dance, that we all had to work with.
Yeah, no, that's great. So how many takes like for the scenes, and like how long was the shoot in total?
13, 14 days, something like that, with a couple of days break in between. So I guess like 16 days. But how many takes? I think the most takes we did of any one thing was probably 18.
That one really long scene, I think, was the 22 takes. I think we have 22 or 23 takes.
Are you talking about the scene with the tarot cards, or the scene
going into Blanche and Benoit's house? Yeah.
So that was when we did the most. And then it ended up being, we were able to use things like, quick whip pans and things to best performance. But that was also, it was a very long scene and all shot in one take. I mean, shot in 18 takes, but continuous take.
Yeah. Okay. And when you finished, right? You finished it, everything like that. Was there anything that you were like, I wish I could go back to that scene? Or was it, no, everything is how I envisioned it?
I would say there's not one particular scene, and I'm actually glad that the public reception has been better than I would have expected, but I actually wanted to do far more of playing with the background. I wanted to switch pictures more. It ended up being just a logistical thing where we didn't want to do so much that people would think these are just mistakes, so it had to be consistent enough. And it feels like, based on the reaction, that we did do kind of the right amount of background action, but I really wanted to flip pictures upside down, change art a lot, move chairs around, just so that the audience was always sort of off kilter. But it becomes very difficult when you're doing a consistent take. But there's a few, I mean, I know we shot a couple of moving rocking chair shots that didn't make it into the movie. There's things like that. But overall, I don't really have any regrets. It's just I would have liked to have done a little bit more of that.
Okay. I mean, it did seem to work, because it was that whole point of they didn't realize until they kind of looked back. And I think having a lot more, you then kind of think, how did you not see that?
And that's a very good point.
Yeah, because it's always like, are they idiots? And I mean, with found footage, there's always going to be a sense of that, because found footage only works if somebody's always holding the camera. And so there's always going to be a point in a found footage horror movie where somebody is choosing to be an idiot because they're choosing not to put the camera down and save themselves or their friends. Instead, they're continuing to shoot. And so that's a tough one to kind of get around. Like, you kind of have to have them at some point decide, okay, I'm just going to keep filming, even though it's a bad idea.
Right.
Yeah,
but it worked though. Like with you know, let's say getting Kevin out the road, right?
Yeah.
It's the putting the camera down, and you create that then angle, which then really helps sell that scene too. So the moment where someone's not holding the camera, the angle in which you create by placing the camera helps to really heighten that scene even more.
Yeah,
you know, so I thought it makes more sense, right? Because as you said, sometimes you watch these films and you'd be like, but why are you still holding the camera? Or how is that filming if, but this, there seemed more logic in the process.
Good.
Which then made it even creepier because you're like, ah, shit. You know what I mean? You watch something else, you'd be like, that's phooey, man. There's some silliness. But when you want something and be like, ah, shit, that could happen. It makes it like, fuck.
Yeah.
I don't want to be in my house on my own now.
Yeah, a lot of thought went into those shots that Mehran set up. And I think that they do help. It's like you're looking in a window and seeing these people do what they're doing, you know, when you just put the camera down. And we're clearly not, you know, it's almost as if we don't even know the camera's running. I think in most cases, the idea is that that he put it down and just didn't turn it off because forgot or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Or a car's coming to smash into them, so I got to throw this down quickly. I don't have time.
Right, and I'm not going to even think about turning it off. Right. I think that the only thing it's not really a regret, and I don't want to give any spoilers away, but at the very, very final scene in the barn, I just wish maybe that we had been able to get some of those shots a little slower so that you can really understand what has happened. And again, I don't want to give away, but I think that there's a little bit of confusion as to kind of who's in the room and who's doing what. And I think if you could see them a little better, it might kind of make a little more sense what this ritual is and what is being done.
I think you're absolutely right. I also would like to have milked a little bit more out of what was happening there in general. And if we had a little bit more time, it was a very difficult scene to shoot.
Yeah.
But like there's again, I don't want to spoil it, but there are set pieces that are there that you literally just see in snippets, like just quick whips. We lost Llana.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would agree with her on that for sure. Would be nice if we had more to that.
Although I will say that not seeing too much does make it even worse.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. You create it in your head, which makes it even better or worse, depending on which way you're looking at it. Oh,
sorry about that. My husband and I are celebrating our anniversary, so I'm actually at a hotel, and housekeeping was just knocking at the door.
Well, happy anniversary, and thank you for doing this. I really appreciate that.
Of course. We love our friends across the pond. Absolutely.
Yes, we do. We hope to have many more.
What's the anniversary?
13 years.
Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of perfect, right? It's the horror film 13. Boom! Yeah. It all fits together nicely.
It does.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Right. So one thing that I you do wonder about, and I think I said, your film, and I honestly, I'm not just saying this because you're in front of me, right? I've already recorded the review, so like everything I say in that, it's everything's legit. But a lot of these found footage films, they do feel a little hokey, right? And this one didn't, right? So what do you watch other like stuff and be like, okay, so that doesn't work, or oh, I like the way they did this, or that's an interesting, you know, situation to kind of create. We could manifest something a bit like what do you do? Or do you just be like, I'm not watching anything else, I'm just gonna do what would I enjoy, like what am I looking for in this, and do it that way?
From my perspective, it's that I think that most found footage films are pretty hokey, and I don't really like them except for the very good ones. And I didn't watch any for reference when we were writing or when I was directing this. Lana watches way more horror films than I do. I love horror films also, but I'm really much more into like John Carpenter and Alfred Hitchcock. Like I like the older stuff. I'm not that into a lot of the newer stuff, aside from the stuff of Ari Aster, like Hereditary and Midsummer, which is, you know, just stunning. I mean, stellar movies. But yeah, I like the first Conjuring also, for that matter. But yeah, I like more traditional cinematic horror films. So I was.
So is it kind of more the psychological stuff? Because I will say there's the you know, horror is a weird one for me, because it's just like some of it is a bit too like creepy.
Yeah, I get that.
But then like I don't necessarily like the torture porn kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because it's just like I don't see the scare. It's just, how can we make something more gruesome? And that's not like, obviously that's, people enjoy that, so I'm not knocking it. It just doesn't work so much for me. So I like the psychological kind of, that kind of fear of not seeing something and envisioning it, which becomes really, it's like when you watch the no, not it, the thing, and you don't really see the monster until the very end, and so it's just like, oh my god.
That's one of Mehran's favorites.
Nice,
incredible.
No, that's the tension that gets built up.
I think the perspective I take is that if I don't really care about the characters, then it, like whether it's a slasher, torture porn, psychological, whatever, if I don't really care about the characters, then the things that happen I don't care that much about.
Yes.
And so that ultimately that's what it comes down to for me. So like if you take a movie like Transformers by Michael Bay, visually unbelievably impressive. Like if I was 5 years old looking at that, I would just be in awe. But I watch them and nothing matters because I don't feel like the characters matter in a film like that. Even though there's such a spectacular production, it's just there's something missing there for me.
Yeah, I mean, with that, because the thing with Transformers that always gets me, right? You've got these huge robots that have got firepower for days, and a little kid's like, oh, I wouldn't do that. He's like, you know what, kid? You're right. We're not going to take over the earth. And you'd be like, shut up. You know what I mean? Like, you'd just be like, you would stomp on the kid and then take over the goddamn earth. I mean, it's just that irritates me. I don't buy that this big machine is listening to a stupid child. I mean, adults don't necessarily listen to kids. So why is a robot going to?
Right. I mean, and I think those Transformers movies are just like prime examples of like no character development, very little story and plot development, and just a lot of action and special effects. And you know, one of the things that was very important to us with found footage, you know, especially as we really wanted to make sure everything really looked and as real as possible. So most of the effects are practical. And, you know, I think that really adds to it. We're also both more into psychological thriller type stuff. I think slashers are fun, you know, but there's not a lot of work for the audience to do. And I think both Mehran and I are like of the opinion that, like, you know, when we're writing, like, let's give the audience work to do. Let's let them think. Let's let them find things. And they get to be the smart ones watching, because they're like, oh, I know more than the characters know. And now I'm scared for them because they don't know. And
it's more of an active viewing experience as opposed to passive, right? The audience is figuring things out. They're putting things together. Yeah.
I didn't watch any found footage right up. Like, I mean, in the past, I've seen found footage, but as we were writing and preparing, I didn't watch any on purpose. I didn't want to accidentally copy or even find out that maybe something we had written was a copy, because I just didn't even want to know. I wanted it to just be our own thing and not really use any other found footage as, I mean, certainly there have been people who said it's kind of like a Canadian Blair Witch, and that's cool. I mean, I saw Blair Witch when it first came out, and I was young. I was in middle school, and it scared the pants off of me, and so, but what the story that we were writing, I mean, yeah, I was thinking about that, but that's a distant memory. I didn't remember a whole lot. And after we filmed and we finished editing, I did start watching some found footage again, just to kind of see. And I was like, wow, there are a lot of similarities here, but I am glad I didn't watch it, because I didn't want that to affect our product.
Yeah. No, I totally, if it's just like, if I'm trying to write jokes for stand-up, like, I don't want to watch any specials. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Even though some of your favorite comedians have just released a new special, it's just like, oh, I don't want to watch this because I don't want to take any, like, any jokes, any,
right.
like,
you don't want to absorb it accidentally. And then, yeah.
So yeah, there's always that kind of fear that you're doing that. It's like when it's when you're speaking with people, you don't, like, for me, I don't really want to, go, oh, who else has interviewed them? Right. Because I'm just like, well, I don't want to be influenced by that. I just want to be able to ask my own questions and do it in the way I'm doing it, rather than be like, oh, well, they did this, so maybe I do that, or you know what I mean? So I definitely understand that kind of like, yeah, let me be in a little echo chamber and isolate myself, so I'm not like being like, oh yeah, this is this. But I will say, I feel that your film does, like, I think it stands on its own. I don't feel that it was like the Blair Witch or anything else. I'd be like, it definitely felt like its own thing.
That's
great.
Great.
That's awesome.
I'd love to hear
it. No worries, man. Like, I'm always interested when you have co-writers or co-anything. How do you do that? How does that work? Because there's so, like, man, you ask that question, you hear so many different ways, so many interpretations of this thing. Like, I know, have you ever read the Expanse books?
I have not.
No. Right, like, the books are, I really like the books. The TV show is okay, but it's not, I feel it's not anywhere as good as the books. But right, the two guys that write it, I think their approach was, one of them writes a chapter, then they send it to the other, who then makes some edits. Then the other one writes a chapter, and that's how they started off. And now I feel there's like 8 books kind of thing. And as the books went on, they kind of resonated with certain characters more. So then they would just write that character and do it kind of like that, which I thought was interesting. But how did you go about, co-writing this piece?
Let's start, Llana?
Yeah, I mean, well, we've been writing together for a long time. So we've done a short we wrote together. And then we have a comedy mockumentary. It is a bigger budget production that's supposed to be coming out, I think, within the next year, that we wrote together. And then we ended up kind of becoming consumed by a larger production company. And then they ended up becoming co-writers with us too. So then it was even a bigger writer's room. And actually getting to come back for Curse of Aurore, where it's just Mehran and I writing, was actually really refreshing, having had a lot more input, on the other project. And then we kind of, I actually think it was good for us, because when we, coming off of that, suddenly we were writing even better together. It was like we were appreciative that it was just us.
Less
and so because we've been doing it for a while, I think we have like a nice like rhythm. And with Curse of Aurore, once Mehran had that idea of like, let's make it basically about us trying to write this, we sort of both started writing like different scenes that we had in mind. So they weren't even really in order. It was like, I was like, well, I want to write in this laying in the street thing, and I think I want to make that into something dangerous and have that be like a horror, kind of like a scary moment. So I took that scene, and then he was like, I'm going to write, this scene where they go into the store or whatever. And so we kind of like wrote those moments, and then we came together, and then we kind of started to string them all together with the greater story. We
knew where we wanted the characters to end up, and we wrote to that. With the stories, like you said, we each took a few stories, and then she overwrote on top of stuff that I had written. I wrote over stuff that she had written. But effectively, the process was, let's outline this. Let's know who our characters are, which we did. Let's know where they're going to end up, and then let's know some complications along the way. Let's sort of write, if it's as little as a sentence for a scene. And then when we had all that, we're like, this feels pretty good. Then we went in and we just expanded each one of those scenes, those notes, into a full scene, and then it happened.
And this was probably the quickest script we have ever written, because once Mehran identified, let's basically make this about us, suddenly it became really easy to write, because we know we've had, between Mehran and myself and the real Kevin, we've had conversations like this. I have cried and said, I'm an unappreciated person, and no one watches our films, and a lot of that stuff was just from life. It was moments that we've actually had, and then brought in a lot of those French Canadian experiences that I'd had as well. So I think this was our easiest script to write, our quickest script to write, and probably had the least amount of arguments between us on this one, because we just it was once we were there in our heads, we were to get it worked. It was very symbiotic writing. And then
the movie itself I don't think we actually lost anything that was in the script. I think every single scene that's in the script is in the movie, even though we did rearrange a couple of scenes. But typically you'll throw away a few scenes in the edit, when you're all done. And this one we did
have to do a little bit of quick rewriting or reworking of some things, because I did severely injure my knee 2 days before shooting, and so the brace and the cane and the pain that I was in were very real, and we had to basically, with everything booked, and we're indie, man, we don't have a lot of money. It was going to be so impossible to change everything around, and everybody's plane tickets and everything else, that I just said, no, I'm in it to win it. Let's do this. Let's just write it into the character. And so we had to change a few things, because Lena was supposed to be the one driving all the time, the tour guide, and I couldn't drive with my leg really. So we had to change some of that. And that might be a slight regret too. Not that I had the injury, but foresight, because if we had known that the cane and the brace would have been a thing, I think it could have been cool to actually have that tie in somewhere. But in a way too, I think the fact that it exists without being called out as a problem for Lena is actually refreshing, because a lot of times if someone's got an injury, they're useless. Well, in this case, she has the injury, but she's not letting it make her useless. In fact, she's doing everything the guys are doing and putting herself at more, more danger. And, I think that it does make the end when, when I'm running through the snow, it's just more stressful on the audience, which I think is a good thing, because they know she can't get very, very fast anywhere, so but
I think it definitely, it was a bit more refreshing than making this big deal about the thing, what I mean, because that's what you, as you said, you usually see. So it was just we get injured, shit happens, right? So that kind of it worked.
Or there are disabilities. I feel a lot of times, when there's a prominent disability in something, that's what the movie is about. And I'd like to see more films where you have people with disabilities and it's not about the disability, right? And so I actually was glad that it wasn't about, this person who is struggling. It's not about that at all. That's just who she is in this film, and we embrace that. And so that
was it does work. But how did you guys get to, as you said, look, you've been writing together for a while. How did it all come together in the first place?
Mehran, do you want to?
So we both worked in the video game industry previously, And I was working. I was an artist, an environment artist in a game company, and Llana was working at the company as like the facilities person. And I decided there was a competition for a website called Underground Online, and I had written a script for that. It was a short horror film competition, which I ended up being a finalist in, but didn't win. And I asked Llana, because I had heard that she was an actress, model, singer, and I had seen her at work, for I think we worked together for at least a year, but I never really spoken to her aside from maybe saying hi and bye. And so I knew, she was somebody at the ready. And when I was much more indie back then than I am now. It was just me and a camera and a friend of mine. We're going to make this movie. And I'd written the script. So I approached her, and she was totally into the idea, but couldn't do it because her sister was coming to town and I had to shoot that weekend. And so I said, okay, actually ended up casting another friend of mine who's actually to this day a very good friend of mine. And she's one of the producers on this film. Her name is Minna Brighton Donatucci. And I cast her and she did a great job. But when it was all done and Llana saw the movie, the short, she liked it. And then she wouldn't leave me alone until I made her a music video for something. So we finally collaborated and we've been going strong ever since.
Yeah, we actually both ended up getting laid off from that video game company at the same day in the same meeting. And I was like, did you know about this? He's like, no, did you? I'm like, no. And as we were like, with our box of stuff, like walking out in the parking lot, we were like, this is our sign. We need to pursue this full time. We've both been given an opportunity and a severance package. So let's just go for it. And we have not stopped since.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. You know what I mean? You just take what life threw at you and now you're doing this.
And neither of us were happy doing that anyway. We both wanted to do more, but we didn't have the time because, we worked full-time jobs and that was the career path we were on. But wanted to have the availability to do other stuff. And we've been very lucky that we've been able to continue.
No, that's great to hear. Hey, I look, one of the most horrific things for me in your film happens very early on, right? And I was just like, oh, why are they doing that? And I'd say, it's eating the poutine. I was just like, what the hell? What the hell? He's like, poutine is not good.
It's so good.
Oh, no, it's not. It's terrible.
Okay, but have you ever had like real French Canadian poutine?
I had poutine in Toronto.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I mean,
like I think it's like the cheese curds. I'm just
I love the cheese curds. Oh, so good. They squeak in your mouth. I feel like it's like ancestral food for me though. Like, just because ever since I was a kid, when I'd go up there, like my sister and I couldn't wait to get poutine. Like that was a big deal for us because we didn't have it in the States. And I don't know. It's so delicious. I feel like it's a sort of a rite of passage if you're going to go there.
I love it, but I ate so much when I was up there because it's one of the 3 things you could order in that part of rural Quebec. Every menu,
it comes with everything. Everything.
One menu had a whole, because I guess there's many different. Like there's I don't know what it's called, but there's like an Italian version of poutine, and there was a number of different variations. So we went to one place, and you open the menu, and there was a poutine menu or a poutine menu. And that actually it was like a grid. And the grid was like, okay, here's potatoes and sizes, and here's toppings and gravy and something else.
You can get it with like a bolognese, like meat sauce on it. They have like a barbecue version, which is like sweet barbecue sauce. Frankly, I only like the traditional, which is just the brown gravy, the cheese curds, and burnt fries, because they fry them in lard and they like over fry them, so they have this sort of like really almost burnt kind of flavor. I guess not a lot of people like that, but I enjoy it. But I did eat way too much. Like there was like when we got back, I was like, I don't want to look at poutine for at least a year. Like I have eaten way too much.
Well, I will say I don't necessarily like wet stuff. Like, I mean, stuff with too much sauce.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. I prefer things a bit like, drier isn't quite the word, but it's just like, I would probably go for a dry rub barbecue rather than a thick barbecue sauce on the top. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, it does get kind of mushy, especially if you don't eat it right away. And the ones at the bottom are just like sopping in the gravy and in the grease.
Yeah.
Those were their real reactions, though. I mean,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I don't know if that was the take we used, but one of the takes, they were really trying it for the first time.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, that was fun.
Yeah, we held it off.
Outstanding. So hey, I realize I don't want to take up all your time, and especially it's your anniversary. So you say you've got the comedy thing. So is that what we're gonna look forward to seeing next?
That's probably the next thing that will come out, and that's called. I mean, the title's even to be determined, but it's a comedy mockumentary. So we'll be talking about it when we know when it's being released.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a different production company that's more or less in charge of that one.
Right.
So we don't really know. We did at one point know some details, but the industry is very strange, and like there's not a lot of communication sometimes. So it'll be news to us when it comes out, but we're looking forward to it. We actually spent 4 years working on that in LA before we shot Curse of Aurore. Yeah. And it's been, just through the whole, they're still editing it, still doing, fine tuning, that kind of stuff. But that should be within the next 6 months or so. And then we're also working on, we have a couple different pitches right now that we're working on that are in the horror family. Mm-hmm. And one, a potential sequel to Curse of Aurore as well. We've had surprising great fan base here in the US. There's a lot of found footage communities, people who are just obsessed with this genre, and they have been really amazing to us. And they keep asking us for a sequel. They want to know more about the curse. They want to know more about the cult. They want to know more about Aurore. And so we've thought through a couple of different hopefully interesting ideas. Mm-hmm. And if we can get the funding for it, then it's something that we are seriously considering going back up there for a sequel.
Interesting.
So, it's funny too, because like there's certainly a part of us that doesn't want to do found footage. Like we didn't really intend on doing found footage, but that's kind of the way it went, and we were like, that is the best way to tell that story. And now that we want to tell a deeper story that takes you back further and stuff like that, it's a little harder to think, how would we do that found footage? And we'd love to do a nice cinematic picture that explains more about the curse and everything, but then we'd lose a lot of our found footage fans.
Okay, found footage fans are amazing. Like these people, they live, breathe. I mean, they consume this stuff. They absolutely love it.
And if a sequel, like I think the Blair Witch sequel is not found footage, and so like unanimously they hate it because it was not found footage, so like we wouldn't want to like lose our base if we didn't go found footage on that, but all the other pitches that we're working on are not found footage.
Okay. What about, did you watch those? There was a recent that's it, Fear Street. There was a trilogy that what came on Netflix.
I haven't seen that yet.
I haven't seen it, know of it, but yeah.
I know of it.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed the fact they released, I feel it was within a month kind of thing, every 2 weeks, a new one. So at the beginning of the month, then midway through, and then at the very end. And so, and the way they tied them together. But I feel in one of them, so it was kind of a regularly shot, and then they started to read the diary. So it's kind of then the found footagey kind of thing with the diary, and then it went back to normally shot.
Interesting.
So, like, I was wondering, could you maybe
check that out.
Merge styles?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely ways that we could do it where it starts out partially found footage and then it goes into, cinematic, or one of the things that we're thinking about is doing like a docu-style, which is basically a horror mockumentary at that point. I don't know if you've ever seen The Last Exorcism. But that's okay. That's considered found footage, and that is a documentary style of some a priest that does exorcisms. And because they did it docu-style, they had room for much nicer lighting and better cameras, and even some musical score and stuff like that in the background that just made it feel a lot more cinematic and a lot less found footage, but yet it is still considered found footage because it's documentary style. So it's possible that the sequel of Curse of Aurore will come to you via a dark documentary.
We'll see.
Yeah.
Interesting. No, that sounds great. So for people to be able to, keep track of these projects and everything that you're doing, where can they find you?
Well, the first time is curseofaurore.com.
Right.
That's the easy one. It has all the information. But Llana, you can go ahead.
Yeah. So for those who are interested in all things Curse of Aurore, that's pretty easy because all of our pages are basically just either at Curse of Aurore or / Curse of Aurore. So Facebook, it's / Curse of Aurore. Instagram is at Curse of Aurore, and Twitter is at Curse of Aurore. And then, of course, Mehran just mentioned the website, curseofaurore.com. It's all pretty easy. And what was the other? What was the others? Yeah, I guess people could follow us if they wanted to follow us individually. So I'm on Twitter at Llana Barron, and on Instagram at Llana B. And Mehran?
I'm on Twitter at @9, spelled NUMBIR 9. And I'm on Instagram at Mehran Torgoley. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, I put that information in the episode info so people can find those links and follow you and keep track of your great work.
Thank you.
I really hope that this is just a crazy success, and I look forward to what you do next, and hopefully you'll come back and talk the comedy series thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, love to.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
Yeah, it is. I feel honored that we have someone across the pond who enjoyed our film and wanted to take the time to pick our brains about it. We were trying for a very, very long time to get Curse of Aurore into the UK. And it was not as easy as pushing a button. A lot of people think it is. It is not. It took a long time for it to finally happen. And so it's exciting. It's exciting to know that we can get more eyes on the film and hopefully some more fans out there. And we're very active in the online, communities. So if there are people out in the UK who are big fans of found footage, it's likely they'd find us on one of the found footage Facebook groups. We're often pretty visible there, posting a lot about updates. But yeah, so this Friday, UK has it. So
yes.
24 September.
24.
That's right.
Yes.
It's exciting. I hope we have many more fans out there.
I am definitely sure you will.
Hopefully the viewers won't think that we're shit Americans like our characters portray. I love traveling over there.
Though, it's there's a connection because they're either hoping that you make it out or they're hoping you die. You know what I mean?
Right.
But they're involved.
Yes.
That's right. They're involved. That's great.
Yes.
Love it.
No, but really, thank you for your time. It was great. I got an email from AJ Foreign, and every time she hits me up, I know it's going to be something good.
Oh,
right.
Awesome.
So she did good work. She did good work, and yet again, she hit me up with something great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
She's great. Yeah, she's awesome. So
cool.
Great, guys. Thank you, Mehran. Thank you. I really appreciate your time, and I really enjoyed the film. So,
awesome.
Love to hear. Thank you for taking the time.
Friday, the 24th, Prime Video. Check it out. Curse of Aurore.
Boom. You heard it there, people. Thank you.